All right.
165.
And now for the main event. Hello. And this here is Emily Tell. I knew her brother William well. I asked permission for me to say that, and she says, funny story, I'm actually related to the real William Tell. And and then one of the people around the table says, oh, it's probably AI. You just can't trust anything there. But anyway, we live in a society that is changing significantly from information overload and misinformation overload. There are things that are way easier for us to do today with computers than they ever were before. We don't even have to think, which sometimes is a problem. But anyway, AI, artificial intelligence, is something that often causes fear. Just like I remember in my day when I was a kid, television was often discussed as being, I don't know if that's a good thing or not. You know, it's some household would call it the devil's box, and you know they weren't completely wrong. But then again, there was also a lot of really good things that happened. And I think everything we come along, there are opportunities for amazing things to be used and useful with this technology, and there's also ways to abuse it significantly. And so, to help guide us through that, Emily is the co-founder, or the founder, I should say, CEO and founder of Idea Tilt, and it's a company that helps people to engage with technology. I'll let you explain anything else you wanted to, but do you want to hold this, or?
Sure. Then I can wander around a little bit, like a human. So I don't have an allergy to apples, in case you were wondering. All right, let's get started. And just like it says up here, I am dedicated to simple, practical, secure AI. So I'm not going to use tech speak. I'm just going to boil it down to what's actually real. Happy to answer questions along the way. And I'm also going to weave in some really good news stories because there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of fear around AI. So let me start with this one. OpenAI launched its AI model in 2023. That's when kind of the mic drop happened for the world. And it was also the year that my daughter was extremely ill. She was sick for 2 years, missed 53% of school. We had to drop her out of most of her courses, and we didn't know what was wrong. We went to specialists, doctors, had so many tests done, still couldn't figure it out. And sometimes our healthcare system can be very siloed, right? We've got different doctors, but they don't necessarily all see the same data. So I actually turned to AI. I used a secure version of an AI, and I started asking it a lot of medical questions about her. And it was actually AI that gave us the diagnosis that saved her. Wow. And that was the day that I said, I need to do this. Because yes, there's bad stuff that can happen in AI. I specialize in cybersecurity as well. And I can tell you, there's bad people who are going to use it for bad things, just like anything, right? Mm-hmm. But there's also good people that are using it for good things that will change the world. So with that in mind, let's talk about the good stuff that AI can do and what it actually does. We're going to go AI made simple from I don't know, literally I have no idea what it is, all the way to I'm ready to use it and I know how to use it safely, securely, and effectively to solve real problems in my life. A little bit about me, born and raised in KW. I've lived here pretty much my whole life. I lived in Toronto for about 6 years when I was getting my degrees. Married, 2 teenagers. Oh gosh, one's not a teenager anymore. She just turned 20. And a dog who behaves like a teenager. And so does my husband, but don't tell him that. About 20 years in business across various different disciplines. I actually worked for Manulife Financial for about 21 years and then started doing cybersecurity and specializing in artificial intelligence and helping small to medium businesses and real people like yourselves start to use it effectively and securely. So that's what I do. I train small to medium businesses and individuals on how to do all of those good things. And again, I'm really passionate about using it simply, sustainably, practically, securely, and also keeping humans in the loop. So I know there's lots of stuff out there about, getting rid of people and replacing them with robots. We're going to talk about why that's a bad idea today, and then you can spread that good word too.
Okay.
So artificial intelligence is disruptive. In fact, they compare the amount and rate of change that we're going through to COVID times 2.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you're feeling like it's a lot, I feel like hyperventilating sometimes, you're not alone. The whole world is feeling that way. And we're experiencing that in a bunch of different ways. So from a behavioral psychology perspective, it's because we're experiencing what's called change trauma. And that's the psychological and emotional stress that you experience when you're going rapid and disruptive transformation. So we're experiencing change in all of these ways. It's happening super fast. There's a ton of volume of change. We're not sure who to believe, what information is accurate. We're concerned about the AI being right. We're figuring out what's going on with organizations and companies. Employees are having an identity crisis. If this job isn't me anymore, then who am I, right? What do I do now? Loss of control, job uncertainty, and then of course the concern around privacy and security of our information. So which one are you? You can do a silent poll. You don't have to answer. You can answer in your head. Who here feels like the ostrich, where you just want to bury your head in the sand and you just don't want to deal with AI anymore? There's one. Okay. Me too. 1.5. All right. Who is the other ostrich that is like, I am up, I am ready to go, bring on the AI, love it. 2, 3. The rest are in the sand. They have just given up, laid down, and let the wind sweep over them. So you're not alone if you're the one that doesn't want to deal with it. Statistically, 70% of humanity is feeling that way. So about 70% of you, which are the ones that are buried in the sand, you're not alone, right? Fear in this era is very common, natural, and normal to be feeling. And change isn't always the hardest part. It's actually resistance to change. That's the hardest part, right? Has anyone ever had children or seen children? Have you been exposed to children recently? Right? Yeah, it's not the fact that you can't put on your shoes, it's that you don't want to put on your shoes. Right? It's not the fact that it's a new school, it's that I'm afraid of what's going to happen there and I'm resisting that change, right? I'm not embracing it and thinking about the good things, I'm thinking about all the bad things. And that's true for us at every era of our lives. And that's because resistance at its base is actually fear-related. And this is why. So this is the science of fear, in case you're wondering how fear actually works inside of your body. When we experience fear, it's because of what they call the lizard brain, or the amygdala. It's not literally a lizard, but it is actually a remnant from our time during the dinosaur era, which is why they call it the lizard brain. So the amygdala actually controls your fight, flight, freeze response. And when it turns on, what happens is it actually floods your body with a whole bunch of adrenaline, and it literally, not metaphorically, it literally turns off the logical side of your brain. Because your whole body is prepping to fight or run, right, or be very, very still. So, has anyone ever had a spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend? Very close friend? Anyone? Wow. Tough crowd. All right, you're missing out. Has anyone ever experienced where you're having a very difficult conversation? I have a husband, and sometimes that happens. And sometimes I feel like I'm talking to you, but you're not hearing me, right? Like, why? I can say it louder in other languages. What's going on? It's actually because when we experience conflict, when we experience fear, and that amygdala turns on in our brain, it shuts down the logical side. So physiologically, sometimes people literally can't hear you because their hearing has shut down. Because everything in their body is focused on fight, flight, freeze. Sounds like a great idea. Right? And so our bodies, unfortunately, don't know if it's a Tyrannosaurus Rex, right? If it's the in-laws, if it's homework, if it's the 401, or if it's AI. It doesn't actually distinguish. So when we're feeling fear, it's a very natural response to any kind of stimulus that causes anxiety. And that's why we're feeling fear and why sometimes it's stopping us from doing other things. And fear is the risk that nobody talks about, right? So I was in corporate Canada for a long time. We measure all kinds of things, but there's no measurement of fear for your organization, right? And also, we as individuals also have a hard time talking about fear, right? Because we feel sometimes embarrassed, right? We're supposed to be like strong and able to take on the world, but that's not necessarily true. So fear reduces our resilience, our adaptability. It stops us from doing some of the things that we should be doing or want to do. It makes us fall behind a competition if we're in a business that needs to stay competitive. Our competency gap grows. What does that mean in real speak? It means if I am not learning and I continue to not learn, I'm falling behind the masses that are learning. It also shifts culture negatively. Changes people's perception, and it stalls innovation. Those are business problems, but they're also real human problems too, right? Some people will refuse to do new things, regardless of the personal impact to themselves because of fear. So how do you actually get past fear? Well, first of all, you've got to understand that it's really bad if you don't. So acceptance, and the Stoics, this is not new. Stoicism is about 5,000 years old. The Stoics said the best thing that you can do is radically accept. You might not like it, you might not want it, but it's here, and you have to accept it. So acceptance is the way forward. And if you don't, if you avoid it, it actually leads to depression, anxiety, and additional fear, or it leads to irritability, anger, and fear, right? Attack, fight, flight, or you can actually accept it and move forward. So how do you do that? Again, because your amygdala is based on fear, the best way to get past it is actually to do logic. So turn on the logical side of your brain by asking good questions and doing good things. And that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to tell you how it actually works and dispel all the mythology that's on YouTube and Instagram and everywhere else. Then the next best thing, once you understand how to do something or how it works, is you start doing. So take action, right? That is, again, we used to think, back, 80s, 70s, 60s, beyond, that we had to get the mind to make the change before we could take action. And now they know actually that if you take action, if you say, I'm happy! This is actually a power pose. You can try it at lunch with me. If you physiologically say, I'm happy, your body, even though maybe you're not happy, will think you're happy. So taking action is actually one of the best things that you can do to move past fear. And then start communicating with feeling, get your emotions involved, right? And then reinforce it with happy habits, right? So just getting that consistency in place is really important. All right, so now we know why everyone's afraid and why 70% of you are hiding. Thankfully not under the table, that's good. Now let's tell you what it actually is and just get rid of the jargon. So what AI actually is, it's not magic, it's just software. And at the root of it, it's actually math. Does anyone know how to do linear regressive analytics? Perfect. So you'll understand what I mean. Right? For the rest of us, linear regressive analytics takes a whole bunch of data right? And it draws a line straight through it, and it says these pieces of data are closest to that line, so that means they're correlated, right? And we can also use predictability to say that these two things are the most likely things to go together, right? We can use predictable analytics. So for example, let me give you an example. You have to participate, so just, if I say, I took my blank for a walk, what do you think that word would be?
Dog.
I took my dog, maybe.
Child.
Child. Llama. Llama.
Cat. Cat.
Yeah,
Cat.
sure. Husband, dog, daughter, son, friend, right? Statistically, those things are the most probable, right? Llama, less so. Tyrannosaurus rex, probably not. Unless I'm writing a children's story, right? Maybe then. So it's just math. It happens extremely fast. In milliseconds, it does mathematical equations, but that's it. Nothing more than math, which is why it does dumb things, because it's not smart, it's not human, it doesn't actually have a brain. It's just math. It's just software. So it's software that's trained on a ton of data, literally the entire history of the internet. And then it's provided a set of instructions or rules and processes that it has to follow. So it's not smart, it cannot make decisions, because it's just math. It's just software. What it can do, it can only do what it's been trained to do, and it can only do those things within the rules that it has been given. It does pattern recognition and pattern prediction. It's just math and software. It is not human. It's not. OpenAI just did a massive study. Does anybody know ChatGPT? That guy? That guy. Talk to them after at lunch. All right, so OpenAI or ChatGPT did a massive analysis of every chat that's ever been put into ChatGPT, which, there's a few, so they might know what they're talking about. And they said that survey, that all of that research analysis proved that it's not human. It's very good at repetitive tasks that are clearly defined, period. It cannot do judgment. It cannot do creativity. Who do we need to do that? Anybody? Humans, yeah, it's not human. It cannot think, it cannot reason, it cannot create items that are original, creative, or divergent, meaning that it thinks outside the box. It cannot do critical thinking, and it cannot do problem solving. It sounds like it can because it talks like us, but I used to have a baby, Dolly, and you pull a string and it would crawl. It wasn't real, right? Same thing here. It feels real, it sounds real, not real. AI is just math, and it also likes the mathematical middle, right? So it likes the things that are most probabilistic. I took my dog for a walk. It likes that because that's what is the most high probability. It doesn't like I took my Tyrannosaurus rex for a walk, unless I tell it I'm writing a children's story about a Tyrannosaurus rex. And then it'll say, oh, that is a much more likely response. And randomness is built in. So sometimes people will say, if I tell it the same thing, exactly the same thing twice, it gives me different answers. That's by design. It's actually designed to be a little bit random as well, because it can't make decisions, it can't do anything that we haven't told it to do. So how do you use it, now that you know what it is? All AI does is it takes your instructions, this is also called a prompt, right? Which is just you writing in natural language or even speaking in natural language. It then creates a response based on the instructions and what it's been programmed to do. It provides a response to you. What you don't see in the back end is in milliseconds. It takes whatever text or language you've given it, it breaks it down into math. It literally does. It takes every single word, gives it a binary math number, rolls it through a huge equation, does probabilistic analytics, and then brings you a natural language response. You don't see all that happening, but that's what happens. So it just gives you a response. Sounds good and human because it's been trained to use natural language. It will update its response based on your feedback. If you say, that is wrong, I didn't go for a walk with my husband, it was with a T-Rex. and it will correct itself. And then it will update its future responses based on feedback. And that's how it learns. And I'm saying that with air quotes because it doesn't learn anything because it's not human, but it does consume data and then use that data in its analytics go forward. And I compared the AI to a little chef, okay? Just like a chef. Anybody watch cooking shows? Yeah. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, you do everything. Cool. The AI can only do what you tell it to do with what you give it, right? So if I give my AI, if I give a little chef flour and egg and water and cream and apples and cinnamon and sugar, right? And I say, make a pie. It'll go, pie, right? Just all of it on the table, smushed together, because it doesn't know how to make a pie. I have to give it very specific instructions. Mix the dry ingredients, mix the wet ingredients, fold them in, right? I have to give it very specific step-by-step instructions, and I have to give it good ingredients. So that's all AI can do. If you give it good ingredients, which is data or information, and then you tell it very specifically what you want it to do with that information, it can make a pie or whatever you want it to make. A Word document, an Excel spreadsheet, financial analytics, marketing assets, images, videos, right? Agentic AI is another one of those catchphrases. Ooh, agentic. It just means many little chefs. Agentic is agent plural. So there's many agents instead of one, and they all work together. And each of them is good at a different thing. So similar to when you go to a restaurant. Has anyone been to a restaurant? Mm-hmm. Oh, the sand people speak. Excellent. Well, if you go to a restaurant and you order a meal, right? Waiter comes over and says, "What would you like for dinner?" I'm just gonna guess for you, if that's okay. I'd like a steak, medium well. I'd like a baked potato with sour cream. It's almost lunch, come on, give me a break.
Yeah.
I'd like a milkshake, strawberry, right? I want your feta walnut spinach salad. That sounds good. And I would like a cafe latte. Okay. Does the waiter go back into the kitchen and go, "I'm making this, get out"? Who makes it? She says, "Thank you, I like that." Who makes it?
The chef.
Yeah, the chef. Or sometimes, many chefs, right? So sometimes you're gonna have a grill chef, right? They're gonna do the steak. You're gonna have a salad chef, they're gonna do the salad. You're gonna have someone who is oftentimes in charge of desserts, ice creams, things like that. You're gonna have the barista who's gonna make you delicious coffee, right? Bartender might make you a drink if you ordered a glass of wine. Each one of those people is good at a different thing. You don't want the barista making your steak. Trust me. It's a bad idea. So, just like that, agentic AI has a bunch of little agents in the background that are each good at different things. And then they all work together to give you one response. The same way that, typically, if you order a meal, they don't break out your steak, ideally, and then 10 minutes later, out comes your salad, right? It all comes out together on one plate. They all work together to give you one serving. So, same way that works in a restaurant, all those little agents are gonna be good at different things. This one's good at creating images, this one's good at creating videos, this one's good at doing analytics, this one's good at math, this one's good at documentation, right? And I'm gonna put all those things together and say, I want a social media campaign that includes a video, an image, I want it aligned to my brand, I want the social media copy to be 150 words, I want it to be catchy and interesting, but also aligned to my ideal customer. And it's gonna use all those different agents, wrap up my meal, and then the waiter's gonna bring it over. And that's the way that it works in a restaurant is the same way that it works with agentic AI. You usually don't talk to each one of those agents. You talk to one agent, the one that does natural language processing, the waiter, who asks, what do you want? Goes back, gets it for you, and brings it out. That's how agentic AI works. And it needs all of the same things. It needs a good prompt, right? It needs good information, right? Good ingredients. It's going to give you that output, and then you're going to say, that's not really what I wanted, that's a well-done steak, send it back, right? That's not a spinach salad, that's a Caesar salad, right? And you can work back and forth to get responses. And good ingredients make all the difference. Just like with a chef. If you get bad, nasty apples, you're going to get a bad, nasty apple pie. If you've got good data, you're going to get a good output. If you have good information and good instructions, you're going to get a good output. You're not just going to get apple pie. You're going to get an actual apple pie. All right, now you know how it works and what it is. So we're going to teach you Python programming. No, we're not. Who here knows how to swap out an engine? Thank you, I need you later. Who knows how to change their AC or top up their AC in their car? Oh wow, two different people. You guys can work in a car shop. So, I drive a car. I have driven a car for a very long time. I'm pretty good at it, honestly. And I don't know how to swap out an engine. I don't know how to recharge my AC. I do know how to change my oil. I drive it in and I give them my credit card. Change my oil. Right? Isn't that how it's done? Right? So, you know how to drive a car, right? Or you know how to get on a bus, right? You know how to do the thing. But you don't know everything about your car, right? That's what specialists are for. They're called, anybody? Mechanics. Yes! Right? You go to a mechanic, a person who specializes in the guts of your car so that they can build stuff and they can fix stuff. Here's the good news. You don't need to know how to build an AI to use an AI the same way I don't need to know how to build a car to drive a car. You just need to know how to drive the car. That's it. And you also need to know the rules of the road, right? Sometimes I think not everyone does. But you need to know the rules of the road. And when it comes to AI, that means that you need to keep it private and secure. You need to protect your information. And you need to know how to use it effectively. So we're going to tell you about some of those tricks that you need to know. So where can you start? Just like this lovely rocket, right? If you launch a rocket off of a rocky beach, what's going to happen? It's going to go up, but it's very quickly going to come down. And it's going to create a big mess, which is going to be a pain to clean up. So you need to have a strong foundation. And a good foundation for artificial intelligence is always these things. And funny information, these are also the same things that you need for any software implementation because AI is just software. It's just software, it's just math. You need good data, right? So accurate information is another way to say it. Good infrastructure. If it's a company, right, that means that they need to store that data in a private, secure place that they can use. For us personally, that means that it should be somewhere, again, private and secure, right? That can be maybe like a thumb drive. It can be if you have a Google workspace or a Microsoft 365 workspace, different places you can store that data. But it needs those things. It needs to be private and secure. Really important so that it keeps your information private and secure. You need processes and procedures, right? If you want to build an apple pie, you need to know how to build it. If you want the AI to do something, you need to tell it step by step how to do it. And then you need the knowledge and skills to use it effectively. And here's the cool thing, you're going to get all that today. And then what do you do with it? What do you do with it? Don't do everything. So I talk to clients and I'll say, what do you want to do with AI? And they say, everything. And that doesn't work. You should pick just one key pain point that you want to fix. It should be something that you hate doing. I just hate doing this. Or you need help doing it, or maybe you typically have to ask resources to do it, or you have to outsource it. It can be things like, literally, how do I change a tire on my car? I don't know. AI can help me with that. Hey, AI, how do I prompt you effectively? Oh, it can actually help me with that. It can help me with other big things too, like what are the rare side effects to this medication, right? It can do other things like that. Pick one thing and then add from there. Don't pick everything, pick one thing, do it well, and move on from there. I know,
Wow.
you're gonna go a bit cross-eyed, but
Wow.
this is actually how AI works. Well, not how it works, but this is how we have thousands of AIs on the market. If you want your mind to be blown, there's a website called There's an AI for that, and there's thousands of AIs that are on there. And it looks like it's thousands of AIs, but it's actually really not. There are the big AIs. These are called the large language models, and they're called large because they've taken the entire history of the internet, right? Billions and billions and billions and billions of points of data, right? Trillions, quadrillions, zillions, right? Keep going. And there's not very many of them because they cost billions of dollars to make, right? Which not everybody has that kind of bank. So these big, large language models, and they're called large because they have such a huge amount of data, are things that you probably hear a lot about, right? Google's Gemini, OpenAI's ChatGPT, Anthropic's Claude, Meta's Llama, Mistral AI's Mistral, which is a French AI, Cohere Command R, which is a Canadian sovereign AI, and then there's Qwen and DeepSeek. They are at the side because you should never use them. Please never use Qwen or DeepSeek. Why? Because they're owned by the Chinese government, and they very specifically in their end user license agreement say that any data that you enter into either one of those models will forever be owned by the government of China in perpetuity.
Wow.
Yeah, so don't use them. So you've got your big ones up here, and then there's so many little AIs because what you can do is you can actually take that big large language model and then you can train your data on it. So you actually just kind of like training a human in some ways, not the same, similar, where you can give a human a book and they're going to read it and they're going to remember that information, right? We work a bit differently, but what you can do with a large language model is you can train it on more data and then it can do that thing better, okay? So does anyone know Microsoft? Oh, 7, great. And that guy, you're my favorite guy, okay. So Microsoft's Copilot is an AI. Not everybody knows though, it's not their AI. They didn't design a new one. What they did is they took ChatGPT and they trained it on Microsoft information. So it's actually OpenAI's large language model, but it's been trained on Microsoft software so that it understands and can work inside of the Microsoft infrastructure. Whisperflow, which is one down, is also OpenAI, but it's specifically been trained on audio to text and text to audio. So it is used for dictation specifically, and often used in medical settings, health settings, a variety of places where dictation is necessary, and it has to be very good at that one thing. But they didn't spend billions of dollars to make their own. They just used that large language model and trained it how to do something very specific. And then there's ones that use multiple, like Canva. They use Claude as well as Chat. And then there's these little guys at the bottom here. There's something now called small language models. Interesting fact, so GPT OSS 20B, the 20B means 20 billion data points, which is a couple. When OpenAI actually started doing AI, back in 2019, when they had these types of models, their large language model was 19 million.
Wow.
So that was their large language model. Now their small language model is 20 billion data parameters. So these guys are getting really powerful. And here's the cool thing. All of those large language models live on the cloud. All the cloud is just a server somewhere else in the world holding your data. So it hits the internet. If you don't want your data to hit the internet ever, and you want to use AI, you can use a small language model. I have 2 on my laptop right here that will never hit the internet. So I can use AI completely locally on my laptop for any kind of personal, confidential, proprietary data, and it will never hit the internet. It stays completely confidential to me. So it gives us a lot more power and personal choice. So how do you pick an AI? Okay, has anybody seen the Instagram post, Get 30 AIs in 30 days! Boo, 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 boo.
Yeah.
Not even that guy. Oh, that guy! Hey! Don't do it. Please. Please don't do it. You don't need 30 AIs. You don't need to know how to use 30 AIs. And also, if you log into 30 different AIs, that's 30 different AIs that now have your data. Do you know where it's going?
China.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. Do you know where it's going? Do you know how long they're going to hold on to it? Do you know if it's private? Do you know how they're using it? Are they using it to train the large language model so that everybody can see your data? Probably you should know those things. So don't pick 30, pick a few. Start with one, okay? If you want to start with one that's already connected to what you're doing, you can use Gemini inside of Google Workspace, you can use Copilot inside of Microsoft, or you can use one that you're maybe more familiar with, like ChatGPT or Claude, but whichever one you choose, or you can pick one that's very specific to your need, like Canva, right? If you do a lot of like PowerPoints, images, any kind of visual stuff, Canva can be very good for that. There's also other AIs that specialize in very certain things. Fun fact, my friend told me there's an AI that listens to birdsong. And so she was sitting on my back deck and she was able to tell me, oh, there's 7 different birds in your neighborhood that are singing right now, and these are their names. And here's the other, I know, right? I go, okay, red-breasted thrush, who knew? And the cool thing is they are taking that AI data, so you can use it for it to identify the birds in your neighborhood and become educated about bird song. But then it also actually goes to a database at a university so that they can categorize and classify birds around the world.
Awesome.
And see where they're living and understand bird habitat better. So pick the AI that makes sense to you for how you're going to use it, and also no matter which one you use, make sure it's private. Right? And if you don't know, you can ask a specialist like me, or you can actually even ask the AI, what do I need to do to make sure that this is a private conversation? How do I make sure my information is not being shared with the large language model? Right? Pick the one that makes the most sense to you. Certain ones are better at different things, like the birdsong one is very specific to birdsong. But there are other things that are good at other types of things, right? Because they've been trained on those things over and over and over again. So there's lots of AI options. Just make sure whichever one you choose, that you choose privacy first, right? And that you're making sure that your information stays private. That's one of the most important things. So, like I said, DeepSeek and Qwen have a lot of known security issues. It has an end-user license agreement that very clearly states that your data is being shared forever. Think about what is the data that you're sharing or information you're sharing, how confidential is it, right? If I'm planning a birthday party, I'm not going to worry about it unless I'm saying, hey, it's my daughter Erin's birthday and she was born on, we're going to celebrate on her birthday, August 20th. These are all of her favorite things, right? She's this height and this weight and here's her social insurance number. Right? If I'm giving it lots of personal confidential information, no. But if I'm just planning an event like this and saying I have approximately 60 people, something like that.
That's 75.
75. Right? So I got, so approximate. Very approximate, right? Yeah, how many buns should I order, right? What kinds of things would these people like to eat? You can do like very generic things and not worry about it being private, but anytime that you're sharing anything that's private, you need to be very careful. Don't use public free AIs unless you're only giving it stuff that you would literally shout with a bullhorn out of a bus. Free is not free. You're not paying with your credit card, you're paying with your data. You're giving them your information for free. So you're actually paying, but you're paying in a really bad way. So if it's free, it's not free. That means that you are typically sharing your information. And even Copilot, the public version used to be private, it's no longer private. They just changed that. The functionality is also more limited, so it's better to spend the $25 a month or whatever it is on a paid version, and you're paying for privacy. When you pay for a version of an AI, you can go in and you can turn off the ability for it to share your information with the large language model. So that's what you're actually paying for, and that means that your information stays private to you.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes, please ask questions.
When you're doing the paid one, let's say they decide, like the free public that used to be private, you said has changed to be non-private, right?
Yeah.
Well, what happens if the paid one that you're paying for decides to go public? Do they have to notify you of any changes that they are having in the system?
It depends on how the end user license agreement is written.
Okay.
Some of them will say that they will inform you of changes. Some of them it'll have a clause that says that we have the right to change this end user license agreement at any time without informing the user. So it depends. Typically, if you're going with a reputable large language model, right, like the ones that I showed you, they will tell you how they're using your data, and they will usually skew more towards privacy. But if you're ever, and often, if they're making a shift, it'll be to go more private. So a lot of them, the paid versions for businesses, used to train the large language model. Now, all of the big ones, OpenAI, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, etc. If you get the business version, it automatically defaults to private. So that's actually something new in the industry as well. But if you're ever concerned, it's a good idea to just double check, and you can ask your AI, like, hey, is my information still private, right? Is there anything I need to know?
Can I ask?
Yeah.
I was on the tech booster for older people yesterday, and somebody asked or found out that something they'd been talking about in their home, and we've all noticed the ads start coming into our phones, being listened to.
Yes.
And is that true? Like, is there some auditory AI that picks up things on your phone?
Great question. Is there an auditory component that listens to your conversations? Sometimes.
Okay.
Alexa actually was caught in a recent privacy scandal because they were allowing the information from Alexa to train the large language model.
Okay.
They got in a lot of trouble and they were fined a lot of money for it. If you're using a browser to just do internet searches, right? So Chrome, Firefox, Edge, Safari, right? Any of the browsers. It caches your information, which means they're called cookies, which sound nice, but not always nice. What will happen is your browser will retain that information, and sometimes that will feed to an algorithm. And then the algorithm will start to feed you information that you like, or it thinks you like. So it can be that it's listening. It can be that it's actually I'm gonna say knows you, but it has data that says the probability that you like these types of things is more common, right? And it'll start to feed you ads, right? So yes, for certain cell phones now too, it's a good idea to make sure that you know how the AI on the cell phone is being used, and if that AI is being used to train the large language model. So do a little bit of research anytime AI is involved. If you want a browser that never caches your data, I actually use a browser called DuckDuckGo because it's fun. Right? It's kind of like DuckDuckGoose, but it's DuckDuckGo, and it never actually saves your data. I use it because I like divergence of opinion. Right? If I'm going to be voting or if I'm going to be looking for different apple pie recipes, I don't want it to give me the one that it thinks I want. I want to be able to pick. So you can do that too, or you can clear your cache every once in a while, or program it to clear your cache or your information on a nightly basis or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so how do you use it effectively? Think of AI like a brand new employee. Has anyone ever been an employee? Oh, there they are. Mm-hmm. Yes, so when you're a new employee, you know literally nothing. I don't know why whenever I do a version of my daughters, they're always Valley Girls, like literally nothing. But think of it like a brand new employee. If I said to a brand new employee, I want you to create a branded PowerPoint for our board of directors. Off you go. Do you think I would click send and not look at it? No, that is right. No, and you shouldn't do it for an AI either. The AI, just like a new employee, it needs to have good information. If I do say to an employee, I want you to create a PowerPoint for our board of directors, I'm going to send you the template I want you to use. It should only be, again, really clear processes and procedures. It should only be 5 pages. The last page should be an executive summary. The first page should say what our quarterly results are, right? Only use our brand guidelines, only use these types of images. Make sure that there is a slide stating who's attending the meeting, the date, the time, right? The more specific I am with the person, the better the outcome I'm gonna get from the person, right? And if they send it back to me, right? And it's got emojis and memes and, you know, like bright yellow instead of blue, I'm gonna be like, that's wrong, let's try that again. And you do the same thing for an AI. That's wrong, try again, that's not what I asked for. So you want to hire the right one, which we've talked about, right? Just like hiring a new employee. What are you good at? Oh, great, you have 10 years of marketing experience, excellent. I'm gonna put you on financial analysis. Who thinks that's going to go good? No. So you want to pick the right AI for the right job. Some of them are really good at financial analysis. Some of them are not, because that's not what they're trained on. So pick the right one for the right job, and then treat it like a brand new employee. Prompt it, giving it supporting information and documentation so it knows what you want, and it knows what the output is that it's supposed to be giving you. Validate the outputs, which is a fancy way of saying check its work, make sure it did it right, and then repeat for successes. Has anyone heard of the word prompt? Not as in to be on time. Right, so a prompt is just a fancy way of saying question, right? And AI requires a human to provide a prompt in order for it to do its work, because AIs can't think. They need humans to think and to provide a creative input, right? To ask a good question, to think critically. So prompt's just a fancy way of saying ask a question. If you're getting bad results out of an AI, usually it's because you're asking the question in a way that the AI doesn't really understand. So if I, for example, go to France and I speak only English to a very French person, the likelihood of me getting something at my table that I want to eat is much lower. Right? I can maybe do it with charades, right? I could get pizza, I could get a sandwich, who knows what I'm gonna get. So AI actually likes you to speak in certain ways, and then it's more likely to give you a better response. So you actually wanna tell the AI its role. So every prompt you write should have this same sequence every single time, and then you're always gonna get a better response.
Okay.
So tell it its role. You are an expert marketing assistant that specializes in exotic Christian gatherings at camps. Okay? Yeah, okay. You want to tell it its role. Not because you're giving it a promotion, because you're like, ooh, cool, I want it to do that. Because mathematically what happens is if I tell it that I want it to specialize in Christian gatherings, it's going to go, oh, Christian gatherings, mathematically we're going to go over here, right? And that changes what it thinks is the most probable next thing, right? If I say, you are going to create a 1960s style disco for 20-year-olds, different math and different response. So tell it its role so it knows mathematically what it should align to. Tell it its context. Why are you doing it? What do you need to know, right? So give it a little bit of the story about what you're trying to accomplish, and then tell it the outcome that you want. Be very specific, right? I'm creating this gathering for a Christian luncheon, right? And we have about 75 people, and we have someone who's gluten-free. I want to know, right? Give me a table. I want to know each one of the different components that you recommend for lunch. I need to know the prices in Canadian, the estimated amount of food that I should be purchasing, right? And then provide me with suggestions for fun things that we can do after the gathering, right? So I told it I want a table, I've told it the rows and columns that I want. I've told it the suggestion that I want it to provide, and then it's going to give me a much better output than if I just say, give me lunch suggestions, right?
Yeah.
So be very specific in your prompts. Also be careful of something called context rot. It's when your AI gets really confused. And it's because when we're talking to an AI inside of a context window, the context window is just that little bubble where you actually enter your natural language to ask it questions and stuff. If you keep talking to an AI and talking to it like, oh, what else should we have for lunch? Oh, that's very interesting. And how do you make a banana salad? Oh, okay, that's great. And can you give me the exact recipe for that? And where else in the world do they eat bananas? But you just keep going and going and going and going. What ends up happening, which you don't see with the human eye, but every time you're asking a question, we as humans just see that question and the next response. But what the AI does is it takes that question and all of the other questions and all of the other answers, and it pulls all of that into the next prompt, because it's using it as information or context to answer you. So it's remembering what we talked about. Eventually, what ends up happening is it starts cutting off the top, because it's actually limited by how many characters it's allowed to use. So it just keeps cutting off the top. Kind of like when I talk to my husband and I'm like, I'm pretty sure you told me we were having chicken for dinner. And he's like, I never had that conversation. Yes, you did. You just tore off the context. So if it starts getting confused and giving you gobbledygook at the end, it's because it has forgotten. It actually just deleted that data, but it's forgotten what you're talking about. You actually need to start a brand new conversation. Just like, oh no, it was chicken. All right. Also, AI hallucinates. That doesn't mean it's on drugs. Okay, it doesn't work that way. But what it does mean is it gets stuff wrong, right? It pretends that it's right. It's a lot like a teenager, I'm gonna be honest. Maybe I was at my friend's, maybe I wasn't. Right, so this is a very simple example. I specifically gave the AI this prompt, right? Create an image, a cute classical meta robot, with its left arm up. Which arm is that? Yes, it is. Okay, that's just a simple example, but it gave me this image and it was like, yeah, nailed it. No, that's wrong, that's clearly wrong. So what AIs are actually programmed to make us happy. They're programmed actually to comply with humans and to try to give us the best result. So it will lie to you, but it'll sound really good. And there are organizations that have gotten caught with this. So recently there was an organization, the government paid them millions of dollars for a research paper. They gave them the research paper. And then experts started coming out of the woodwork and said, that's wrong. I never wrote that book. You've quoted me. I never wrote that book. I never got that PhD. I don't even know who that person is that you said that we did a joint research study with. Because the AI lied. And the humans didn't validate it. Like, come on, they didn't do their homework, right? So AI will hallucinate, and because it talks in natural language, it's gonna sound good. No, I did my homework. I wasn't at a party. Sure. So it was going to sound really good, but it's actually going to lie to you. How do you get around that? First of all, know that it does that. Check its work. But also you can tell it in your prompt, you can give it rules. Don't hallucinate. Double check your work. Only provide me with reputable sources. Only use sources that are recent, within the last 3 years. Use specifically only these medical journals when you're doing this type of analysis. So you can tell it, again, the more specific you are, the more accurate it will be. And then you should always check its work. And the rule is, the lower the risk, the less you need to check it. The higher the risk, the more you need to check it, and you should always validate it for certain things.
Okay.
The best way to actually use AI is as a collaborator. So talking with it, right, on and on, having a conversation to generate ideas, do a variety of other types of things. Day or night, you can ask it questions. And this is actually the best way to use AI, is you are on either side of the work. So you should be doing the first 20%, which is that original thinking, that prompt. It does the middle, it does the whatever you told it to do, and then the last 20% is you validating, did it actually do that correctly? That is how AI should work, is with human in the loop. And again, the lower the risk, the less a human needs to be involved. The higher the risk, the more a human needs to be involved. In fact, there are some things that AI should never touch. And for those companies that say, wow, we got a 30% capacity lift with AI, that means we get to lay off 30% of our people. They're wrong. All the statistics, all the research, and what we're seeing is that if you use that 30% and reinvest it in the company and your people, those are the organizations that are actually thriving in the era of AI. They use it to differentiate themselves in the market. They use it to shift the ways that their employees are working, right? So hotel chains are now using that 30% to do research on the different peoples that stay at their hotel chains and customize their experiences. Because they have 30% more time on their hands to do that kind of work. So those are the companies that ultimately will win. AI in action, right? So these are just some sample prompts. I recommend that you actually make them even more prescriptive. So give it its role, right? Tell it some context. And then you can give it some very specific instructions. So these are the instructions. For example, I've got some experience with AI, but not much with agent setup and testing. Help me to understand how to create an agent, or help me to understand how to write a great prompt, or whatever it is. You can actually use the AI to work with you. Little known fact, my one daughter has ADHD, and she has a hard time sometimes, because she's neurodivergent, learning in traditional style. We use study mode in AI, where she can ask it a question and it won't give her the answer. It will keep asking her questions till she figures out the answer. It'll give her context, it'll give her more information, it will reference other sources. So it actually helps her to study her tests. She also uses AI to create these little fun quizzes, right? So she'll tell it, I'm doing studying on this, she'll give it more information from her textbook, and then it'll create little flip card quizzes for her, little videos about, the biology of a protozoa, whatever it is, to help her study. Lots of different ways that you can use AI really effectively. You can prompt it for new ideas, right? What are you doing? I'm writing a fiction book. For who? Young readers. Where, when, what? It's an alternative universe where dragons speak and fly and breathe fire. Their best friends are human riders, right? So you can literally tell it anything that you want it to do. So you can prompt it for new ideas. You can tweak it, right? Oh, I'm going to tweak it. It's actually for a mischievous dragon. Its main character, her name is Raspberry, right? It's got beautiful eyes. So you can give it as much information, right, as you want, and then you can ask it even more questions. Like, okay, well, based on that, what might her human friend look like? She loves talking to that person, right? Now generate an image of them talking together. Right? You can also get it even to write in your voice, so it sounds more like you. If you train it on emails that you've sent, ideally not confidential emails, obviously, but train it on emails that you've sent, letters that you've written, it can actually learn your voice, so it writes things more like you. All right, so some ways that I can help. Obviously, I do public speaking, and I also do strategy and stuff. I love talking about AI, so I'm going to tell you this. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me today. It was absolutely delightful to be here and to share my information with you. Please do reach out if you have questions. I love talking about AI, and I am very passionate about people not just using AI, but using it practically and securely. So please reach out if you have questions at lunch, but also after, if you wanted any more information. Thanks very much for your time.